I'm very excited to be here. I am at Il Palio restaurant, part of the Sienna Hotel in Chapel Hill, North Carolina. I'm right outside the restaurant. I've got the wall of wine behind me, and I'm here to taste with you guys this one wine today. So I'm really excited about it. I love wine. I hope that you guys love wine too, and I think it's going to be a lot of fun. So we're going to go through the deductive tasting method. The deductive tasting method is something that's provided through the Court of Master Sommeliers. It's kind of a step-by-step method for tasting wines that help you make connections and eventually learn how to blind taste. But I will not be tasting blind with you today, which means that I do in fact know which wine we're tasting. The wine that we're going to be tasting today is this Grati Chianti Reserva. It's a 2015 vintage, so that's the year that the grapes were harvested. And Grati is the name of the producer. So if it is a Chianti wine, that means it is out of Tuscany, so the Tuscan region in Italy. And I also note this is at least 70% Sangiovese due to the DOC G guidelines. So I'm going to go ahead and pour myself a little bit, and we're going to walk through how to blind taste this wine. This looks really good. I'm very excited. All right. So there are lots of ways that you probably see people tasting wine, drinking wine, looking at wine. There are lots of ways to do it. One thing that I really like to do when I'm first looking at a wine is I like to look at the wine over a white napkin or a white piece of paper. A lot of times you see people looking at it up through the light, but that's really hard for me to do. So I like to look when the light goes through it, and I kind of hold the glass at a 45-degree angle and I look right through it. So there's gonna be a lot of things that I'm gonna notice about the sight of the wine. The first thing I'm gonna try and do is deduce the color. So this wine would probably be a ruby, kind of a mahogany, a rich mahogany if you would. Maybe some secondary purple undertones. It's a little bit dark, it's a little bit pigmented, not like a Malbec or an Australian Shiraz, but you can tell this grape definitely got some sun. So I would say this is ruby with maybe a secondary hue of purple. This wine is clear, this wine is bright, and it's probably got about medium concentration. And concentration is something really easy. One thing I always do is I look at it over a ring or a piece of paper, and depending on how much I can see or I can't see, that determines the concentration. So since I can kind of still see my fingers and I can kind of still see my ring, this is gonna be a medium concentration wine. The next thing I'm gonna do is I'm gonna swirl this wine. You can swirl it lots of different ways, but this lets the ethers kind of react to the oxygen, so you can kind of get more out of the wine. I also opened this wine about an hour ago, so I had lots of time to interact with the oxygen. And you want to give it a really nice sniff. So you don't want to do short sniffs. You don't want to be a dog sniffing a fire hydrant. Like, that's silly. You want to really stick your nose into it, and you want to really inhale without overwhelming your olfactory bulb. Wow, this wine smells really good. I would say the first thing that I'm getting off of this wine is leather. So, and this is not an old leather. This is not like a used like saddle, or this is like a brand new pair of shoes. This is new leather sandals kind of leather, which is awesome. It's a great indicator of some earthiness in this wine. As far as fruit goes, it's definitely red fruit dominant. With a lot of wines, red wines at least, you can say they either are red fruit dominant, black fruit dominant, or blue fruit dominant. This is definitely a red fruit dominant wine. Cherry, raspberries, a little bit of berries, so brambleberries, blackberries, blueberries, raspberries, but the cherry is definitely the strongest thing for me. And it's a sweeter cherry. It's not a really tart cherry. It's like a maraschino cherry. And there also is a little tiny bit of some sour to it too, so maybe like just an underripe maraschino cherry, along with the strawberry and the raspberry and the black fruits and the blue fruits. And then there's that earthiness. So there's that ton of that brand new leather sandal, a little bit of mushrooms. I get some indicators of oak right off the bat. So dark chocolate, cocoa, smoke. Now, I wouldn't say that those are indicators of American oak or French oak, because I do know that this wine is a Chianti, and that it is Italian. I can guess that it's probably Slovenian oak, but the smell of cocoa and the ground chocolate is definitely an indicator that this wine spent some time in oak. All right, now comes the fun part, and I get to taste it. Now, when you taste wine, it's got to be a long process. You can't just swallow it. You've got to keep it in your mouth for a long time. I know it's always really rude to kind of blow bubbles or kind of swirl the wine in your mouth, but you really got to aerate it. You got to kind of swish it through your teeth. You got to feel it kind of everywhere, and where you feel it in your mouth can give you kind of hints about where the wine is. So the first immediate deduction that I realized is that this wine is a dry wine, not a sweet wine. If there was any residual sugar in this wine, if either the winemaker had added it or if it was found naturally, I would have felt that on the very tip of my tongue, but I did not feel anything on this wine, and I can tell immediately that there's no sugar. So this is definitely a wine that is dry. This wine is fairly acidic, and that's very common in a lot of Italian wines, but acidity is a really fun one because it's the feeling of almost like puckering, like you're thinking about something that's very sour. I always say with acidity that if you close your eyes and you think about a really ripe lemon and you roll the lemon around your hand and you smell the lemon and you cut the lemon and you squirt the lemon and you kind of feel your mouth watering underneath your tongue, like that's the sense of acidity. So this wine probably has medium plus acidity, which is great because it will pair well with acidic foods like tomatoes. So I can tell this wine has a medium body. It's a full-bodied, medium plus acidity. It's dry, and it also has like just very soft tannins. And tannin is a fun word that wine people use all the time, and it's kind of described as that feeling of drying out your mouth, and that's really more of the pucker. And tannin comes from the residual stems and skins and seeds of the grapes. So when you make a red wine, you let the stems and the seeds and the skins all sit with that mush. And then the residual that's in your glass sticks to your teeth, it sticks to your tongue, it sticks to inside your mouth, and that's the feeling of tannin. So this wine is not very tannic. It's not like Nebbiolo or Barolo, but it is fairly tannic, which is an indicator that we need some food with this wine, although honestly this wine is absolutely delicious and I would probably drink it without food, but it would definitely be great with food as well. So this would probably have medium tannins, and combined with the oak, it does not make the tannins too harsh at all. They are really well integrated. This is a great glass of wine, great bottle of wine. And the last thing that you really look for is the finish, and that is how long it stays in your mouth, or how long does the taste linger. You can also tell the alcohol content by if there's a burn after you swallow the wine or not. This wine hung around for a little bit, but not too long. So I would say it has a lingering finish. So this was a really great glass of wine for all of the reasons listed above, from the fruit to the earthiness to the well-integrated tannins and acidity to the balance of the oak. It's a great, and it's a very classic example of a Chianti as well. So you may have noticed this is a Chianti Reserva, not a Chianti Classico. Reserva is the Italian word for anything that has more than 3 to 4 months in oak. And this probably had around, if I had to guess, about 2 years, maybe 38 months in oak. So it definitely falls into the Reserva category. Because Chiantis are not necessarily wines that are designed to age for a very long time. We've hit this wine right at a sweet spot. So this is a 2015 vintage. 15 is the year the grapes were harvested, and it kind of sat around oak for about 2 years and really had some time to mellow out and grow in the bottle. So we're hitting this Chianti right now at a great spot. It's got a fair amount of age, but it's not too old. And because it's a Chianti, it means it comes from the Chianti region of Italy. And it has to be 70% Sangiovese. And the cherry and the sour cherry is a real indicator right off the bat that it's Sangiovese. There are some other grapes that could be in there as well, Caniolo, Malvasia. Sometimes Chianti producers even mix Trebbiano, which is a white grape, into Chianti as well. But I would probably gather this is more like 80% Sangiovese, like a Chianti Classico. It's super delicious on its own, but it's also a very good food wine. So if you want to pair this wine with our Pappardelle Bolognese, which is super delicious, our Bolognese is made out of beef, pork, and veal, so plenty of fat to kind of soak up that residual tannin. Or our Iberica Pork Pluma, both which are available right now on our carry-out menu. This wine would pair perfectly with it. Or anything that we have to offer. So feel free to pick up this bottle of wine. We've got plenty of it here. We're selling it for $20, which is wonderful. It's our retail price. And enjoy it with me. So cheers. Woo.